Right, everyone, let's go. Teruma, Parshat Teruma, very, very interesting class. It's a Parsha you might think is not so interesting because Rabbi, it's just construction, the construction of the Mishkan. If you're Larry and you're an engineer, you're interested. But if you're the rabbi, you say, how do you do it? I don't know. You buy it online. It comes there.
You get it in the kit.
You get it in the kit. So, for those who like IKEA instructions building, this is your Parsha. There was a book I read about once in, I think, Popular Mechanics or something. It's like how to build a house. They sold a book. Like, you can build your own house. Instructions.
Sears, I think.
Like in the 50s or something.
Yeah, I think it was Sears.
Yeah, the guy wrote how his father and his friends built a house. So this week's Parsha is how to build a house for God. But we're going to talk about one small detail, which is a very hopeful message. So before we go, we are going to do the rules of Rashi, and before we do that, we're going to ask ourselves a question. One of the questions that come up, rabbis get asked a lot, is, in biblical times, there were all these miracles and all these signs. The Jewish people were in Egypt. Hello. Jewish people were in Egypt. God sent Moses, and Moses split a rock, and Moses, split the sea, and all these different things. So it was easy to believe in the redemption. It was easy to believe in all the good things. Why can't God give us a concrete sign that better times are on the way?
80.
That is the question we're going to be dealing with, and the rules of Rashi, page 81, we're going to deal with today.
81.
81. See, I had to correct you because otherwise, what would you need me for? I have to be special. Number one is Rashi always goes for the simplest explanation. We've learned that Rashi is not there to bring Medrash. Rashi is not there to bring Kabbalah. He's there to say the simple stuff. So he always goes for the simple one. Number two, Rashi assumes that you remember everything from beforehand, which is probably the most frustrating part of Rashi. Rashi is like, what do you mean you don't remember? I just said it. And
2 months ago.
Yeah. And number three is Rashi cites the source only when it resolves a problem. Usually Rashi doesn't quote a source. He just says it, and if you trust Rashi, fine. You don't trust Rashi, fine. Also fine. Okay. So let's get into the Parsha this week. This week's Parsha, we learn about the construction of the Mishkan. The Mishkan in Latin is tabernacle. Yeah. It is the portable temple that was in the desert. It serviced the Jewish people as long as they were in the desert. Once they got into the land of Israel, then they built a permanent temple, a permanent Mishkan, and later on, they built the Beis Hamikdash. What is the difference between the three? So the Mishkan.
Structures.
Well, the difference between the three structures. The Mishkan in the desert was wooden walls and material roof. The Mishkan in the land of Israel was stone walls and material roof. And in the Beis Hamikdash, it was all stone. You could not see any wood. Even if they needed wood for the framing, whatever it is, it had to be plastered over, covered over. And the materials were only curtains. And that's it. So, obviously, one of the questions, actually, I once saw a history thing on YouTube, is the whole story of the Mishkan is not true. It's just an allegory. Why? Because, first of all, they were slaves. And how do they know how to build these things? And number two, where do they get the materials from? The Jewish sources are not really bothered by the materials, the source of the materials, because when they left Egypt, it says they emptied out Egypt of all their precious metals and
JNF trees.
JNF trees, right? Well, whatever. The Amazon. What do you mean? Where do they get it from? Amazon. But Rashi is bothered by one item. It's one item out of the 13 things that they needed to build the Mishkan. Rashi is bothered by one thing. If we look at the storm, so there goes our power there. So Rashi is bothered by where did they get wood from? That's what he wants to know.
Not just like you would.
Not just anywhere. Well, forget, but
The
acacia, right? Cedar.
Hey, he's skipping ahead. Come on.
Right.
Rabbi, you can do his job.
Exactly. I mean, I have to fill the time, right? There's no commercials here.
Come on, he's building up the plot.
Exactly. 1 second. I'm going to go turn on the computer so we have. Yeah.
You kids these days just want to skip right to the end.
Exactly. There's no patience for. You guys want the whole class in a 45-second reel. You know, remind me of the joke. The guy went to the rabbi and said, I wasn't feeling well. I fell asleep during the sermon. Could you sum it up, your sermon in 2 minutes? He says, for you, no problem. He says, if you can say it in 2 minutes, how come you didn't? Don't use that against me when it comes to the high holidays. Thank you. Okay. Let's get back to the
Which
slideshow.
reminds me of another joke. This rabbi had a sermon that always went 18 minutes. Every single sermon was 18 minutes. Finally, the president of the congregation said, why are your sermons always 18 minutes? He said, because that's how long it takes me to write the sermon, and I live 18 minutes from the shul. So I do it on the way to the shul.
He's a better rabbi than me.
He said, buy a house closer to the shul.
I live 20 minutes away from the shul, so now you guys know. See, the difference between that guy and me is I walk into the shul and say, oh, shoot, I need to give a sermon. Okay, back
The
to...
difference is that guy had a gym membership and you refused to schwitz.
No,
You
I
do
want
the walks.
I want to schwitz. I just don't want to pay and then one of those what do you call it? You know, New Year's resolutions and you never go.
And
All right.
You walk here, you walk to the gym.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, let's get back into. Okay, hold on. Sorry, we had a power failures. Whoever's watching, so we're just gonna getting back into the slideshow. All right. Okay, we're actually not here.
1B.
Sorry, everyone. Okay, so we are on text 1b. So, so Rashi is bothered by this question: where do you get the cedar wood? So Rashi says, ask the question: where did they get wood? He said, I'll tell you. The Medrash Tanchuma, it says that Yaakov Avinu, Yaakov, a patriarch, had it's called in Hebrew Ruach HaKodesh, divine inspiration, foresight, divine foresight. And he knew that one day the Jewish people would have to build a Mishkan. So when he left Israel, when God told him to go down to Egypt, he brought down seedlings, small plants of shittim trees, and he replanted it in Egypt. And then he told his people, his sons, pass it on. And when you leave Egypt, take these with you. Okay, very, very, very nice medrash. So, based on the rules which we did on page 81, right? The Rashi opts for the simplest explanation. Rashi assumes, well, the number 2 is not going to come into a second, but we're going to have questions on rule 1 and rule 3. Rule 1 is that Rashi always opts for the simple explanation, and Rashi only cites the source when necessary. So here comes the question. The question is, this is the simplest explanation? That Yaakov Avinu brought trees down from Israel, and then it was passed down for all these generations. That's the simplest explanation. That's number 1. Number 2, why is Rashi telling us who said it? Many times Rashi says something and we don't know. In fact, it's not the simple explanation. The word midrash is in there. Why does Rashi tell us? And obviously the question is, why does Rashi use such a complex explanation? There are other commentaries that disagree with Rashi. The Evan Ezra, you see in text number 2, he says, he actually quotes Rashi, not by name. And he says there are some people that say, it was, Yaakov Avinu brought it. But he says, more likely, he says that there were, when the Jewish people traveled, they came to a, what do you call it, in the desert when there's trees. Always, thank you. I had the word at the tip of my tongue. Had oasis and they had trees over there.
He's starting to catch it from me.
There you go. That's what happens when you're friends for so long. And they and Moshe and everyone needed wood anyway, because Moshe told them, "Listen, guys, we're going to be at Mount Sinai for a while." They were at Mount Sinai for 11 months, and there was wood there, so they chopped down wood anyway for their houses and for everything else. So when then came the commandment to build the Mishkan, they went and chopped down trees. And now you can say they were in the desert. It's not the first time that we discovered the Jewish people see trees and water in the desert. In fact, in a few weeks ago, after when they traveled after the splitting of the sea, it says they came text 3a. They came to Elima and they found 12 springs of water and 70 date palms and everything else. Also, we find because text 3b, this idea that people have that the Jewish people were in the middle of the desert, the middle of nowhere, and no contact with any other human beings is just not true. If you look at the portion of Matot, where they traveled, they kind of hugged the line of other civilization. And we see in text 3b, the Gemara says that people would come and trade with
knew to go.
Exactly.
That the Medians knew.
Right? Yeah, people
There was
knew.
a bunch of, I mean,
People knew where they were. Yeah, people came to trade with them. Yeah.
Now, did they have livestock?
The Jewish people had a lot of livestock. Yeah,
They
sure.
brought with them.
Yeah, they took out of Egypt.
Okay, well, that explains where they got the fabric.
Oh yeah, the fabric's not a problem. That there is a clear verse that says they took a lot of livestock out of Egypt with them. That's not a problem. Gold, silver, all that's not a problem. So the Evan Ezra's explanation seems to be a lot straightforward, right? Either you can say they bought the wood from surrounding towns, or they came across an oasis. But Rashi's thing is, Yaakov Avinu saw 200 and something years before that they're going to need wood, and he brought down trees, and it was passed down from father to son, and the Egyptians never touched the trees. It was there for 210 years, and no one touched the trees. It seems a little bit like Asaf doesn't like these midrashic,
no, I do like them. I love them actually. I walk around the entire Pardes.
I was kidding. I was just calling you.
The only thing that I would add to this is a bit of sod, which is exactly what acacia wood is. You have to look at the substance, the material.
Right, but what we're talking about is why does Rashi? We're focusing on Rashi. We're going to learn a lesson from this.
Right. Yeah. But,
Yeah.
Rashi doesn't lean on the pshat here. He goes into
But
Drash.
the question was why.
Yeah.
That's our
He
question.
also goes into.
No.
He doesn't lean on
The Rebbe, by the way, would always say that when you think Rashi is only giving a simple explanation, is actually interweaving the Midrash and the Kabbalah and everything else.
And
So
one
let-
more minor point is acacia is known to grow in arid areas.
Right. It is. Right. So I mean it. So you're only adding to Rashi Ron. You're only adding to the Rebbe's question, which is, hey, I love this guy. He's always bringing food and drink.
It was on sale. So
There you go. That's my Jew boy. Hey, grab a kiva, Ron. It's okay. All right. So let's go back to Rashi rule number 2, which we quoted today, which is Rashi relies that you are going to remember everything you learned until this point. Let's go back to the beginning of the Parsha, which is only a few verses before this acacia wood problem. So Rashi says, based on the verse in 4a, it says, speak to the people and take from me an offering. Take from me an offering. What does it mean? Take from me an offering. So Rashi in 4b comments on the word teruma. He says the word teruma means, he says hafrasha. Hafrasha means he says separate it. You should separate from what you already have. And the Jewish people went out with a lot of fancy materials from Egypt. So God's asking, take from that material that you already have, and please donate it to the Beis HaMikdash. The story with the rabbi, he says, I have good news and I have bad news. So the bad news is the shul needs a new roof. The good news is the money's in your pockets, right? We don't have to do anything, right?
That's a good one.
Right?
Should use that more.
There you go. So God says, I got good news and I got good. Good news, we're going to build a temple. The good news is you don't have to do anything for it already. We have it. All you got to do is now donate it. So now, based on that, now we can understand why Rashi did not want to accept the view of the Ebenezer that they went and they bought it, or they went and they chopped it down, because Rashi just explained 2 verses earlier that all the materials of the Mishkan they already had. So then it wouldn't make sense that the wood is excluded from this category. The Jewish people now had to go and buy it. So Rashi was forced to, based on his previous explanation, say no, they already had the wood. But how did they already have the wood? Oh, so he quotes the Medrash as saying that Yaakov told them to take the trees with them. That means they already had the wood when they left Egypt. Verstehst? Yeah, you understand? Comprend? Capiche? Very good, right? Class over. Very good. No. Yeah, there you go. So,
Thank
but
you, misspelled question.
so now comes another question. But why did Yaakov have to bring trees all the way from Israel to plant it in Egypt? Why can't we just say that there were acacia trees, just like they took gold and silver and everything else from Egypt? Do we ask where did they get the gold from?
You can find random things like weeds and stuff that is replaceable, but gold and acacia wood apparently is important enough to take with you.
Fine, but by gold, for example,
You're not just
we
gonna
don't
find
know.
more gold along the way.
But we don't know where the
Reason why
gold. But we don't know where the gold came from. Why did Rashi point out specifically?
We got it from our neighbors when we asked politely to borrow.
Yeah,
the
so
wood.
why couldn't we say the same thing about the wood? Why did Rashi point out about the
Because
wood?
we knew to take something with us even before then, like something more.
So some people say, so look at.
Older wisdom that has to do with acacia wood, not
So,
just
listen,
any
listen,
kind
listen,
of wood. It's
listen.
kind of high in DMT.
So Rabbi Chaim, the Ber Mayim Chaim says the reason why Rashi points out that Yaakov, I mean, he didn't bring logs of wood. I mean, he didn't cut down trees. Means he is there a wood for unplanted? How do you dig up? Is there a wood? Is there a word when you remove a tree?
Uproot.
Uproot. Thank you. Uproot. I was thinking like destroy, but I guess you would use the same thing. He uprooted the tree from Israel. You see, I'm born in Brooklyn. We don't. This concept of trees and grass is an abstract
Hey, a
concept.
tree grows in Brooklyn.
Right. A tree. A.
The word transplant would be
There you go. Applicable. There you go. So Yaakov, why did he uproot and transplant the tree from Israel to Egypt instead of just taking Egyptian trees? So the Ber Mayim Chaim says in text number 6, it's because Yaakov, because the wood was going to be used to build a temple, Yaakov wanted holy wood. So he wanted wood from the Holy Land. So that's why he said he uprooted trees from Egypt and he replanted from Israel. And he replanted them in Israel. So if you're an adult in Egypt, thank you. See, just in the words of Gene Wilder, that was just to get your attention. So if you're father, okay, nice answer. But if you're a 5-year-old kid, you're thinking, whoa. The wood has to come from Israel, but the gold doesn't, the silver doesn't, the oil doesn't. Why only the wood? That doesn't make any sense.
It was special wood.
Yeah, obviously. It
You
was.
wouldn't make a toothpick out of something that didn't taste good.
Yeah.
What?
He's joking. You have to learn to 99% what Larry says. Yeah.
Toothpick doesn't have any taste at all.
What are you talking about?
If
These
they had a
mint.
bad taste, you'd notice
Exactly.
it. You're right.
Yeah,
yeah.
Because they make the right
Saying
wood.
that you won't make a toothpick.
So-
Sounds like when a
Wisdom.
tangent goes off of a tangent.
So the Rebbe comes.
Welcome to Larry's world.
Welcome to Chabad Peppercorn. So the Rebbe answers the question like the Rebbe answers the question that Yaakov knew. The reason why Yaakov brought the wood is because Yaakov knew the Jewish people are going to be in Egypt for a long time, and he knew the slavery was going to be bad, and yet all the promises are it's going to be okay. But after a while, the Jewish people would lose hope. They would forget about the redemption. Let me give you an example. That God wants to give hope. So there's the Shabbat before Tisha B'Av. It's called Shabbat Chazon. You familiar with that? The Haftarah before the Shabbos, on the Shabbos before Tisha B'Av, starts with the word Chazon Yishayahu, the vision of Yishayahu. Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Berditchev famously says that on that Shabbos, every neshama is granted a vision of the third Bet HaMikdash, the third temple. Why? So Yitzchak Berditchev explains it's because the Jewish people have been in exile for so long, and it could be the people are just going to give up, forget about it. It's been so long, it's never happening. So God gives them a taste to say, no, Mashiach is coming. Just hold on just a little bit longer, and you're going to see Mashiach is going to come. So in the same vein, Yaakov Avinu, our patriarch Jacob, was worried that the Jewish people would give up. So he wanted the people to have some hope. But the problem with hope is, if hope is some abstract thing, it's very hard to have hope. When hope is something in front of you, it's tangible, then it's a lot more uplifting. There's this Holocaust story. There was a guy who got a job. He got a job. Sorry, that's the wrong way of putting it. One of his job was he used to leave the camp, and you would have to schlep stones and wood. It was a very hard job, and he had to put it into this small room. And it came to a point where he said, "Enough is enough. I'm throwing myself against the fence, and it's just too much." And on the day he was going to end his life, he noticed someone had scratched into the wood that it says the eternal one of the Jewish people doesn't lie. There's a verse in the Netzach Yisrael Le'Yishaker. The eternal one of Israel is not false, right? And he gave him hope, and he gave him strength to keep going, and he survived the Holocaust and built a family. So Yaakov was worried, and we see what the Egyptians did, that the Jewish people needed something to see, not a promise, something to see. That's why, by the way, Yosef was buried in Egypt. The fact that Yaakov also promised the Jewish people are going to be redeemed. Yaakov's having shakshuka in Israel, right? The Jewish, okay. The Jewish people are suffering in Egypt, and Yaakov's promise. Yosef says, no, I'm suffering with you. So what did Yaakov do? Yaakov took the trees from Israel that breathed the air of Israel, that felt the soil in Israel, and planted them in Egypt. And when the Jewish people would lose hope, they could look at these trees and say, no, there's a physical sign that redemption is coming. Let's look how the Rebbe frames it in text number 7. He says, when the children of Israel were in exile in Egypt in such a state of terrific distress, that when the Egyptians said that every newborn son should be thrown into the river, they drew comfort and consolation from seeing the trees that Jacob. I didn't say acacia trees, because the reason I'm not translating it is because there's a whole argument exactly what trees they are. Cedar, acacia, whatever. The tree that Jacob brought and planted in Egypt. This was even more comforting than God's promise, I will bring you up. It was especially comforting to know that Yaakov made this incredible effort when he prophesied that his children would build a tabernacle in the desert. He instructed his children, instructed their following generations.
The tabernacle was built with acacia, not with cedar.
That's why I didn't translate, because there's an argument. What is acacia? Some people say cedar, some people say acacia.
I mean cedar.
I mean Rashi, or someone else says that it could be there was some species of wood that.
So some argue that the tabernacle was built with cedar and not with acacia.
Yeah, how to translate the word ateshitim?
Maybe here.
No, but these people are just quoting something. These are not. I'm just saying that's why I'm not getting into the. I'm not getting now. So you see, because Yaakov, a patriarch, loved the Jewish people so much, and he thought, what are my people? You're going to think like an exile. So he went through the whole hassle of uprooting. I'm sure he had an employee do it. Uprooting the trees in Israel, and he could have brought logs of wood, but maybe they would have rotten, and schlepping them down. Remember, he came down when he was already 130 years old when this whole trip. And schlepping them down to Egypt and planting them. Why? So his children should look forward. They could have bought wood from merchants in the desert. They could have got wood. No, but he was worried. What are the Jewish people going to think when they're in Egypt? So you see, text 7b, the Rebbe continues and says, when the Jewish people saw the wood that was transported them to Egypt, they were transported to a point beyond Egypt. from Israel, so that these trees signified redemption. This underscored for them that even during the time of bondage, they were not fully under the Egyptian thumb. They were under Hashem's authority, who promised, I will bring you up. And one day they would be liberated from Egypt, sent to Israel and bring these trees with them. Now we can answer another question that we had on Rashi. One of the questions of Rashi was, why did Rashi quote Tanchuma? Rashi never quotes the source. Why did he quote who it's from? Because if you look at the word Tanchuma, comes from the word Nechama. What does Nechama mean? Nechama means comfort, consolation. So Rashi was saying that this is what the Rebbe's interesting twist on this Rashi, that people look at this Rashi, you never even know what the Rashi was telling us. Okay, it was just nice. No, Rashi, just with the words he's quoting Tanchuma, is trying to tell you that we sometimes think that God doesn't care about us, or our forefathers don't care about us, or don't care, whatever. They're enjoying whatever they're doing. No, our parents and our matriarchs, they cry for us. The famous line in Jeremiah, Rachel mavak al banah, Rachel's crying for her children. So Yaakov wanted his children to have a symbol of hope. And who says it? Out of all the sources, Tanchuma, that the Jewish peoples have some comfort. So now let's apply it to our own exile and our own redemption. 1950, 60 years ago, right? Depending how you do the math. The Beis Hamikdash, it was destroyed, and not only was the Beis Hamikdash destroyed, we don't have the service of the Beis Hamikdash. We're also in spiritual ruins, and we're in a place that we don't belong. We're what is it? I once remember there was a guy flying to Miami. Cyril and I went into New York. I forgot what it was, and it was the dead of winter in New York City. I mean, it was freezing, but the guy was flying to Miami. So he shows up to the airport, shorts, Hawaiian shirt, open over here, straw hat, sunglasses. The guy did not take off. They didn't put on a sweater. The whole flight, right? He looked like an idiot, right? But just flying to Miami, so you have to dress the part. So the question is, how do we fit in? How do we feel that consolation, and how do we have hope for the times of Mashiach is coming? So let's look at what the Rebbe said. Text number 8. Jews are very, very distraught. Is that an acacia tree?
Yes.
Tell you, I don't know.
What kind of tree is that?
That looks like a bristlecone pine.
Right?
For you with acacia.
Mordecai's right.
Yeah, for me, you think I know? I have no idea.
You want to find
To
out
me,
what it is.
to me, by the way, that doesn't look like a good tree, because the beams were 15 feet tall.
All I know is that kind of tree would make great toothpicks.
There you go. Very good.
Apple tree is really an ugly tree.
There you go.
I used to have, yeah.
So the Rebbe says like this: Jews are very upset, very distraught. We said this already. Here we go. Jump ahead.
Oh, you took it away before I could get it.
The Jews are I'll go back to it later. Jews are very upset about being in exile, because a Jew's genuine desire is to experience the divine presence in the land of Israel, with the Beis Hamikdash. The desire is rooted in the core of our spiritual being. We are shaken to the core by the fact that the divine presence is not manifest as it used to be when the temple was around. Moreover, the following teaching of our sages disturbs us greatly. They taught that we must regard the fact. There's a famous Gemara in Yuma that says if the temple is not built in our times, it's destroyed in our times. So how do we have hope? So the answer is that we also have trees planted. We also have people that live on a different level. People that live in a godly reality. What does it mean, a godly reality? To us, the exile is a reality. And Mashiach times is fantasy, utopia. What does Mashiach times mean? Mashiach times mean when Judaism, godliness is going to be absolute, and everything else, all the other shtus, is going to be a question. So for most of us, that seems like a wacko idea. But there are some people throughout the generations that lived like that. That to them, the godly reality was the reality, and everything else was. There's a story where the Helak Ruzhna, I think it was, or he was traveling, and he comes to an inn, and he stayed in the room, and after a while he calls the innkeeper, and he says, "Tell me, where did you get that clock?" I said, "Oh, it's a very, very special clock." He says, "What do you mean? It's any random clock?" I said, No, that's a very unique clock. Looks special. No, please look into it. So when he looked into it, he found out. You ever heard of a man named the Chayza of Lublin, the seer of Lublin? You ever heard of him? You heard of him? Yes or no?
Mordecai's right.
No, I'm asking. You ever heard of him?
No.
He was a great tzaddik who lived in the late 1700s, early 1800s, around there. And Chayza means a seer, a vision, right? And this clock belonged to him, and he was very poor, and he had to sell all his belongings. So hey, the original, when he heard about this, he said, now I know why the clock is special. Everyone else's clocks, they count down, meaning another day has passed. You wasted another moment. The Chayza's clock says another moment closer to Mashiach. It sounds different. There are certain people that the way they look at the world, not the way we look at it. That's why, by the way, why do you go to a tzaddik for a blessing or for advice? Why do you go to a tzaddik for? People would go to the Rebbe for business advice. Why do you go to the Rebbe? You think the Rebbe was in business? Why do you go to a tzaddik for advice? It's because a tzaddik, a righteous person, sees the world in a different way than we see it. A tzaddik sees the world from the Torah's perspective as absolute. I often give this example. The Rebbe instituted the campaign to put on tefillin before the 1967 war. Why tefillin? Why not any other mitzvah? Because the Rebbe said, it says in the book of Deuteronomy, when the nations of the world will see the name of God is upon you, they're going to be afraid. The Gemara famously says, what's the sign they're going to see? Amar Rabbi Elazar says, this is the tefillin of the head. So the Rebbe said, if the Torah says you put on tefillin, the enemies are going to be afraid, then that's the reality. We look at it, it's nice. The Rebbe said, no, that's the reality. The Torah.
That's what they're doing in Israel now.
They're doing it since 60.
They have stations all over for
Yeah.
people to stop and put on.
Yeah,
For men
but
to stop and
here
put
also, by
on.
the way, in a lot of kosher restaurants and stores, there's a stand you can go put on film.
Yeah.
Yeah. Someone offered one to here. I said, we don't get that much foot traffic during the week.
Your
So
brother was there with tefillin a while back. He had a couple of tefillin at Roma.
yeah, Roma has its film stand. Yeah, it's there. Yeah. So in our generations, who are the cedar
You guys
trees?
need to put one?
What?
You put one in Disney, Universal Studios.
Cool.
I mean, they allow it. Where? I mean, the Chabad rabbi over there.
One there. There's a lot of foot traffic.
Yeah, the Chabad rabbi over there is very hooked up with Disney and Universal. Yeah. Yeah. So who is the cedar or acacia trees in
It's in the tunnels.
With a 1920s hat. Let me put a tefillin
Yeah.
on you, boy. Hey, boy chick.
just dressed up as
How you doing, sport?
as Woody,
Would you like tefillin?
dressed up as Woody, with the leather straps. Get over here. Anyway,
Yankees won the
so
Super
who
Bowl
was
series.
so
Come on.
who is
We need to
the
celebrate.
who are the cedar trees? Who was the sign of hope? So the Gemara says these are the tzaddikim, the righteous people of every generation. Let's look at how the Gemara frames it. Text number 9. Chia bar Abba says, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, a righteous person does not pass away until a similarly righteous person is born. As the pasuk says in Ecclesiastes in Kohelet, the sun rises, the sun sets, and he gives an example. Before Eli, the high priest, Shmuel was born. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that God saw there would be very few righteous people. So he planted them in each generation, as the passage says, for the pillars of the earth belong to God. He set upon them.
Are these the 36?
No. These are above this. These are the pillars of the world. These are not the 36. For example, Shimon bar Yochai, he once told this is in the Kabbalah. Some people wanted to. He was on the second floor. He wasn't only on the second floor. Literally, he was on the second floor, figuratively. So some of his colleagues wanted to come up, and he said, it's a famous line in the Zohar. It says, only somebody who switched, changed spicy to sweet and dark to light can come up. I mean, and these were great men. It's a different level. And these are the tzaddikim that this is what we're learning in Tanya. These are the tzaddikim that are so few. And these are the people you see in text number 10 that Isaiah says, and your teacher shall no longer be concealed from you. And she see your teacher means that they see the reality. There's a famous story, I've said it a million times, but it fits in here very well. The first Hasidic master was the Baal Shem Tov. His student was the Maggid. The most older and prestigious student of the Maggid of Mezrich was a man named Menachem Mendel of no, not yet.
Wait, you said who? The most famous student of
No, the
Maggid?
oldest and most
Yes.
revered student was because his name was Menachem Mendel of Vitebsk, or Menachem Mendel of Horodakar. We won both names. He lived next to Vilna, and the Misnagdim drove him crazy, so he decided he was going to move to Israel. That's when Chabad, Rabbi Shneur Zalman of Liadi, started the soup kitchen, which still functions today. It's going on for 200, started in 1776 or something. The soup kitchen, still there in the old city. You can. Anyway, so he lived there. He lived in Israel, and some Shurgana went up on Har HaZeisim, Mount of Olives, and blew the shofar, because it says it's tradition that before Mashiach comes, Elijah is going to go and blow the shofar, or he's going to herald the coming of Mashiach. So everybody was all excited. Mashiach's here. So Menachem Mendel went, opened his window. Someone came and told him. He went and opened his window. He smelled outside. He said, Mashiach's not here. So Chassidim said, they analyzed the story. Said, I don't understand. If he knew Mashiach is here, then he knew. If he didn't know, what's smelling help? They're all confused. So they finally were told, they were taught, they understood that Menachem Mendel, the Mashiach reality was already by him. What's Mashiach reality? The Einan Mavad, there's nothing else except for God. Hashem Echad, Ushmo Echad, God and His name. By him, that was the reality. The problem is the outside world hadn't caught up yet. So you had to open the window and see what was going on outside. So there are some people, even after the Churban, even throughout the generations, that their reality is a godly reality. And when you look to them, you know that there's going to be a time when the godly reality is going to be the reality. And you can see text number 11, the famous student of the Mittel Rebbe, the second Chabad Rebbe, and the Tzaddik, Hillel Paritcher, he said the destruction of the temple did not cause a divine presence to be concealed from perfectly righteous Jews. He says, my teacher, Isaac Humler, said in the name of the Alter Rebbe that for lofty souls such as Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the temple was not destroyed. By Shimon Bar Yochai, there was no. That's why, interesting, we celebrate the day of the Yartzeit of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Usually, the Yartzeit, the day of passing, is a very sad day. Lag Bomer, right? We light fires, we play music. Why? Because we understand what it's really about.
Who was it? Akiva that was born?
No, Rabbi Akiva's student stopped dying.
No, who died when Rashbi? Who was born when Rashbi died?
I'm not sure. Who died? Who was born on Lag Bomer?
Yeah, there's
I'm not sure.
story about it.
It could be. It's not that time of year. We're dealing with Purim, right?
No, never mind.
Yeah. I ain't Rabbi Google over here.
I'm waiting to end this because I want to ask you about what he smelled. What was the reference to smelling? Because I sort of know it, but
Meaning he smelled the outside world to see where it was holding. I mean, was it still coarse? It was an obstruction to godliness, or was it a conduit to godliness? When Mashiach comes, by the way, it's very appropriate that we're saying this, because we're about to finish the cycle of Rambam. Every year the Rebbe said we should learn 3 chapters of Rambam, and it's about 11 months. We're about to finish the 47th, 5th cycle of Rambam. The Rebbe started in 1984 or something. And so the last few chapters of Rambam says, don't think there's going to be miracles. We're all going to grow wings and time travel. The world is going to be a normal place. The only difference is, instead of the world being an obstruction to godliness, it's going to be a conduit for godliness. That's the only difference. But it's very hard to believe, especially when you see the world the way it is. So what do? You look at the tzaddik. A tzaddik, you see, he's living in Mashiach times. Let's look at the text number 12. How the Rebbe, I'm behind in my, how the Rebbe says it. He says, seeing the proverbial trees planted by forefather Yaakov in every generation is comforting. That means Yaakov didn't just plant trees in Egypt. Yaakov planted a tree. He saw that there should be a Yaakov, a tree in every generation. With this strength, we merit being fully consoled with actual and real consolation. After this long final exile, the only consolation is the coming of Mashiach. Now, let's end off with one final lesson. The fact that there's a tzaddik, it's very nice. What does it do with me? So the answer is there's the macro and the micro. All those people in the Torah are not just individuals. The stories, they're also templates. We have a Yaakov, we have a Avram, we have a Yitzchak, and we have a Moshe Rabbeinu. All these people we also have a Pari and a Haman. We have to get rid of these people. So the same thing is, we all have inside of us a Yaakov that is not affected by Egypt, is not affected by the exile. The famous midrash that Yaakov came down after 2 years of the hunger. What happened when Yaakov came down? The hunger ceased. Because when Yaakov comes, there is no troubles. Yaakov is a different reality. We also have that inside of us. Every neshama, we have to bring that out. That Mashiach reality inside of us, and when we do that, we have an impact around us. Let's finish off what the Alter Rebbe says in one of his letters he wrote. Text 13, page 94. Every soul in the world was included in the collective soul of first Adam. In general, the soul is divisible into 613 elements, representing the 248 organs and 665 sinews. More specifically, his soul is divisible into innumerable sparks. Now, it says Yaakov looked like Adam. Now, it could mean physically, but also spiritually. This means that Yaakov's soul is also comprised of all the Jewish souls. Thus, Hashem's infinite light shines openly in the souls of all who follow Yaakov's example, upright of heart, engaged in Torah and mitzvahs observance. This divine radiance is strongest and more intense in the minds and hearts during prayer. So we have to know. We have to know that yes, we're in exile and it's dark, but you can never lose hope. We always have to daven to Hashem that you bring Mashiach now. And we have to believe, like it's number 12 of the 13 principles of faith. Ani mamin b'emunah shlema. I believe with complete faith. B'vias Mashiach and the coming of Mashiach. V'af al pi she'yisma me'ah. And even though he may tarry, and even though he might delay, maybe Mashiach South American, he's not good with time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, right.
I wait for him every single day. So we should merit Mashiach should come. We united with the Rebbe. Reunited with our loved ones, no more suffering, and we'll see a refuah shleima for B'tzal Yehuda ben Chana Henya, and all those who need healing. Have a good week. Let's do key points. Key points are: the Jews used the acacia wood for the tabernacle.
Oh, so wait, they're not in they're agreeing with me then. It turns out.
All I said, the people who printed most people say it's acacia wood. All I said was there are some people translated cedar wood.
What are the names of the people who disagree?
Who are these people?
I need their address. We're gonna debate them
We're
later.
gonna go,
Rough them up a
petition
little
them.
bit.
I'm gonna.
You're gonna
Make
go.
toothpicks out of them.
You're gonna go take their books and.
I'm gonna find out exactly where they learned this.
Jews used. I go into Home Depot and I'm overwhelmed at different types of woods. I don't
Acacia
know.
wood is a very important.
Specific.
You can't just compare acacia with like some other thing and say that
It could have been gopher wood.
Yeah, or maybe MDF.
No, you can go for.
The Jews used the acacia wood for the tabernacle, which Yaakov prophetically planted in Egypt. Rashi accepts this seemingly fantastical explanation to reconcile how the wood was readily available. We answer, the Yaakov's trees were a tangible reminder of hope and redemption for the enslaved Jews in Egypt. Like Yaakov's trees, righteous people in every generation are planted as reminders of Hashem's presence and the Geula and Mashiach times. And every Jew has that spark of Yaakov in him, which can be assessed through Torah, mitzvahs, and prayer. By connected to our inner spark, we can experience the moments of spiritual redemption, even in exile, and we wait for the collective redemption. Have a very good week.
Okay, go back to the